What's up, guys? My name is Elias, and Marvel Studios is officially 50 plus projects deep as of the release of the Fantastic Four First Steps. And in celebration of our first look at Tom Holland's Spidey suit from Spider Man Brand New Day, along with the commencement of filming for John Berthal's Punisher special presentation, which is also set to release next year, I thought it'd be fun to give y'all my true blue ranking of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Small disclaimer, I have only seen the first episodes of Agatha All Along, Eyes of Wakanda, which just came out, and Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider Man, so I will not be including them on this specific list. But brace yourselves because there will be some hot takes. And without further ado, let's get it. Now, first and foremost, I just wanted to give an honorable mention to the Marvel one shots. It wouldn't even be fair to rank these among the movies or even the specials and shows, so I have decided to leave them off the list. But I really just wanted to pay homage and show respect for the few Marvel one shots that were just kind of like bonus features on the DVDs. These mini-sodes, if you will, included the Avengers tie-in Item 47, which told the story of a down-on-their-luck couple utilizing the aftermath of the Battle of New York to their advantage, all the way to Thor Ragnarok's Team Daryl, which was more of a comedic story about Jeff Goldblum's The Grandmaster rooming with this guy named Daryl that Thor befriended. We haven't really seen these since 2017, with Marvel opting for the hour-long special presentations instead. But I feel like it would be interesting to see more tie-ins with the greater universe at large, with All Hail the King, for example, telling of how Trevor Slattery escaped prison and showed up in Shang-Chi. I really wouldn't mind seeing these making a comeback, especially if Marvel really wanted to put more content on Disney Plus, as was their issues with a lot of the Disney Plus shows that they put out. Thing is, I'm always going to choose to watch a comic book movie or series if I was on my deathbed rather than a quick 5 minute clip of some nonsense that general viewers would mostly go without. But on to the actual ranking at hand. But we do have 53 projects to rank. So grab a seat, get some popcorn, put this on your Bluetooth, fall asleep to it, whatever you got to do. Brace yourself. We got a lot to get through. And first off, starting our list at the very bottom is She Hulk Attorney at Law. She Hulk twerked its way to the bottom of my list, though I was presumably far from the target audience for this pointless series anyway. It saddens me to see such wasted potential for a project I was admittedly curious about when it was first announced. Semi sufficient CGI and the in your face, women have it harder than anyone in the world dialogue withstanding, She Hulk should have been a fun superhero version of Law and Order, but ended up emphasizing the MCU's increasing reliance on dumbed down humor as well as quantity over quality. Feige, next time, get some writers who actually know how to write a law show, not writers who only seek to push a poorly proposed agenda. And for the love of God, never do Daredevil, Abomination, or my boy Hulk that dirty ever again. Despicable. At number 52 is Thor Love and Thunder. Ugh. This glorified spoof movie does little to enhance Thor's character arc, but does much to anger fans of the God of Thunder. Love and Thunder is the product of director Taika Waititi's Unchained Wrath, hot off the success of Thor Ragnarok, where he was allowed to do basically anything he wanted with the movie, which was a terrible, terrible idea. Kevin Feige, I'm sorry to say it again, but sometimes you have to reel your talent in. If not, facepalm inducing debacles like this are the result. Not even the visuals, Hercules, Eternity, nor the Batman himself, Christian Bale, can save this Russell Crowe wasting, cancer joke infested travesty from being one of the worst comic book movies around. You can tell how much I don't like this thing. At number 51, I got Echo. 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 I can't think of a more useless live action comic book property than Echo. It's not that Alakwa Cox is bad in the lead role. It's not even that I don't like seeing Kingpin any chance I get. And it's definitely not that I don't love culturally important projects. It's that with all of the characters at Marvel Studios' disposal, they decided to go for quantity over quality and throw at the wall whatever stuck. And somehow an Echo series became a thing. With only one Daredevil fight scene as its saving grace, I don't see a reason for me to ever revisit this one, and I sincerely hope that Marvel learned their lesson. That sometimes side characters need to stay just that, side characters. Ringing in the top 50, I got Secret Invasion. Now, I liked Secret Invasion more than most people, but even I can admit it's not that good. Making Nick Fury this jaded former super spy is a cool concept in hindsight, but the way it was executed was so odd, and he doesn't do much super spying anyway. Killing off Talos and Maria Hill were bad decisions considering they were two of the best side characters in the MCU. And Rhodey being a Skrull, apparently since Endgame or perhaps a little before by the way, undercuts a lot of essential moments between he and Tony. Emilia Clarke's Gaia being a super Skrull with every MCU character's superpowers, even though she'll probably never be seen again, was another weird choice to make. I feel like this could have been something truly special had they done something more akin to the comic storyline of the same name. But there's just lots of wasted potential here. Lots. At number 49, I got this year's Ironheart, or as I like to call it, Iron Fart. Ironheart was cool enough in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, but I never thought she needed her own series. And once it was released on Disney Plus, I was kind of right. It's by no means the worst thing I've ever seen, and I was actually interested in most of it, but something just kept gnawing at me, even when I gave it some decent reviews. And I think it's just because I do not like Riri Williams. Dominique Thorne is not the problem. It's literally just her character. The way they wrote her is so self absorbed and arrogant, but not in the charming Tony Stark kind of way. She's really just kind of like unlikable, claiming that she's so much better than Tony Stark when it's like, relax, lady. Tony Stark built his armor in a cave with a box of scraps, okay? Plus, he ends up selling her soul. She ends up selling her soul to the literal devil, played by Sacha Baron Cohen, by the way, who was a great addition to the MCU, which just makes her even more unlikable because it's like the whole series set her up for a villain arc rather than showing us the kind of hero she is. I mean, she really didn't do much heroing here, though, did she? She actually joined up with the bad guys early on. And yeah, she defends herself and fights off Anthony Ramos as the Hood in the process, but it doesn't make her heroic in my eyes, no matter how cool her new suit is. So, needless to say, I don't need a season two. I don't even really need to see the character again. Sorry. Number 48 is Thor the Dark World. This extremely forgettable entry in the MCU is the reason why I was so shocked when Avengers Endgame revealed that Thor's mother had died. I had completely forgotten. It's certainly not the worst movie on the planet. I just can't seem to get myself excited to rewatch a superhero flick with such a boring plot and even blander villains. Still, if I was on my deathbed and I had to watch either this or Thor Love and Thunder again, at least I know I'll drift into a deep sleep watching The Dark World before my very last breath. And I didn't mean for it to get all dark. Sorry, I'll see myself out. This is probably going to ruffle some feathers, but I got Miss Marvel at number 47. Perhaps in another world where comic book properties aren't as commonplace as they are in ours, Miss Marvel might stand out as a unique approach to the genre. And although it's a culturally significant project with some decent laughs and action, the abundance of uniquely distinct properties out there makes this Lost at Sea series feel like something you stream once and say, that was interesting, and then move on with your life. The damage control subplot, along with the Avengers Con scene, are highlights of the series as Kamala contends with familial troubles and high school woes, but even so, the only real highlight for me was at the ending, when we find out that Kamala has been a mutant this entire time, effectively thrusting talk of the X-Men into the MCU before Deadpool and Wolverine did it in full swing. This is a show I haven't even thought twice about since I watched it, so that's why it's so low. Sorry, not sorry. If Miss Marvel's placement on this list didn't ruffle any feathers, then I'm willing to bet that Loki's will, because I got it at number 46. If Sylvie's murderous act hadn't contributed to the madness of the multiverse, the MCU's second foray into streaming could almost be deemed as gratuitous. Though this seems to be one of the fan favorite MCU series, sorry, to me it seems like Marvel Studios wanted to simply pump out as much material as they could out of a glorified side character who had already canonically died numerous times. And with Kang now being 86 from the equation entirely, season 2 almost seems obsolete as well. I don't care about Loki falling in love with a version of himself because that's pretty in character. But I do care that the coolest things to come out of the show were a couple of cameos of Loki variants in like 2 episodes, and him turning into the god of stories at the end of the series. Other than that, there's really no need for me to revisit this one. It is what it is. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, aka nobody's favorite show, is on my list at number 45. I had high hopes for Bucky and Sam's buddy cop adventure since the first trailer made it look like the comic book version of Lethal Weapon, but I was kind of let down. Sure, there are some cool moments like John Walker rage killing a terrorist with his shield and Sam wearing his iconic cap suit for the first time, but when a seemingly irredeemable Baron Zemo ends up being the best part of your show and a large amount of the runtime is devoted to fixing up a boat, something's not right. The show just seems like a missed opportunity to do something fresh or even remotely fun, and although I dig seeing Sam as Cap, there was no reason to have a whole series centered around whether he was worthy or not of the shield. Cap gave it to him. End of story. Wear the dang shield and move on already. Bucky deserves so much better than this. At number 44, we got Captain Marvel. Warning, only watch this if you like seeing superheroes rock old ladies in the jaw. The only way this movie made $1 billion is due to the endgame hype at the time because Brie Larson's humdrum Captain Marvel made for one of the least interesting protagonists in the MCU when her solo outing dropped, complete with monotonous dialogue and a standoffish attitude. She sure can kick some butt though, especially in that scene where she goes full on Super Saiyan mode. That was pretty cool. But nevertheless, the film itself includes a few enjoyable moments that mostly involve a 90s era Nick Fury, Ben Mendelsohn's scene carrying Talos, and a wasted Jude Law as Jan Rock. Don't even get me started on the high intelligence because I literally had no idea what the plot was concerning it. So while the story isn't the most engaging and the action isn't all that entertaining and the story isn't all that interesting, where was I going with this? Number 43 is Captain America Brave New World. This pseudo sequel to The Incredible Hulk, not kidding, missed the mark completely. While not inherently a bad film, it's just not that good. I'm a fan of The Incredible Hulk, as you'll see later on in this list, but I was really I can't even speak, perplexed that they chose Sam Wilson's first outing as the post Steve Rogers Star Spangled Man to address things from that movie. Danny Ramirez brings some levity to the rather serious fourth movie, and Anthony Mackie is a great Cap. But when you have Carl Lumley bringing all the feels only to sideline him for 80% of it, it makes me wonder just what the heck director Julius Ono was thinking. Then again, this movie was infamously met with creative differences and reshoots galore, so it's no surprise that this wasn't the best movie ever. Still, Sam Wilson deserved better, but at least Harrison Ford was dope as Red Hulk. I'll give it that. I already know this is going to be a hot take, but I got Spider Man Far From Home at number 42. Obvious plot twists, weird humor, and a nonsensical story where Tony gives the most powerful weapon to a previously dead teenager who then gives the weapon to a mysterious magic man he just met, on top of the lack of standout moments, aside from that one illusion scene, hinder Far From Home from reaching spectacular heights. Whereas Homecoming at least had Spider Man discovering what it meant to be a hero, this one kind of walks his progression back post Iron Man's death to having him desire a normal life instead, only thrust back into action because of Nick Fury, who was actually Talos this entire time. Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio is perhaps the saving grace of the film, as he poses a genuine threat to Spidey, even though his plan makes no sense. And I do love how J.K. Simmons and J. Jonah Jameson makes a return. But the Night Monkey stuff is just kind of stupid. Look, this is not my favorite Spidey film by a long shot, but it is a Spider-Man film, and Spidey is my favorite Marvel hero, so I get some brownie points. But that's really not saying much. This movie was not that good, guys. Sorry. I Am Groot is going to sit comfortably at number 41. Baby Groot is cute, but giving him a bunch of animated minisodes was kind of unnecessary. Still, I mean, he does have some fun adventures here, and seeing as how he was the best part of the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, more of him is never a bad thing. It's fun to watch with your kids if you have any, and seeing Rocket cameo in it was nice, but that's really about as far as my thoughts go on this thing. Bringing in the top 40 is going to be WandaVision, which is sure to ruffle some feathers for sure. WandaVision was a solid introduction to Marvel Studios' Disney Plus endeavors with its unique sitcom vibe. However, the main reasons it falls so low on this list is just due to lack of rewatchability. It also places a filler like way of explaining Wanda's villainous turn in Multiverse of Madness instead of properly standing on its own, which eventually became a problem with most of the MCU shows thereafter. Making Wanda a sympathetically broken character was the right way to go, but the execution in doing so wasn't the greatest. They'll never know what you sacrificed for them. Didn't she just enslave all of these people for months? I know that a lot of the plot was also because of Agatha all along, but I think less unfulfilled teases like Quicksilver being Ralph Boner really could have went a long way. I'll admit this one kind of hurts, but I got Moon Knight at number 39. I had the highest hopes for Oscar Isaac's MCU debut as Marvel's more psychotic version of Batman, but its CGI heavy action, unclear stakes, and confusing mythology bogged it down just a little for me. I can appreciate the show's mysterious candor, though, as if it was almost impossible to tell what was actually real or a part of Spectre's mind, which that kept me engaged. But perhaps the series' biggest crime was its near absence of Moon Knight himself. I really like Oscar Isaac as an actor. Do not get me wrong, but I'd have preferred to actually see Moon Knight more than anything, and much less of the Kaiju Mighty Morphin Power Ranger esque final battle between Khonshu and Amit. Hopefully, he comes back in one of the Avengers movies or something, and maybe this series will move up on my list in hindsight. But for now, it stays here. I know I'm batting 1,000 with these Disney Plus shows being so low, but I'm sorry. I got Hawkeye at number 38. Finally getting his own show 10 plus years after a brief cameo in the first Thor movie, Hawkeye gave us a seasoned but retired bow and arrow wielding spy who reluctantly takes on an enthusiastic protege while dealing with the sins of his past. And it just kind of works. The Christmas setting makes it stand out among the other Disney Plus series, and Kingpin is always a welcome addition in my book, even though he wasn't necessarily the Kingpin I usually like. He was kind of made more of a joke here, but whatever. Which also likewise essentially made Daredevil canon for the first time. So, yay. Yelena's revenge arc is also closed out in this one, and you get some funny scenes with the Tracksuit Gang and Tony Dalton's Swordsman. It's easily one of the best series the MCU came up with, in my opinion, but it just doesn't stand alone by itself. Something about it. But I don't think I ever really needed a whole series focused on the character anyway, and if I'm being honest, I just don't find myself rewatching this one anytime soon. 37, I got Black Widow. Releasing a Black Widow film after she died in Endgame probably wasn't the best idea in hindsight, especially when the character had been around since the dawn of the MCU and was long overdue for her own film. Although Red Guardian and Elena were welcome additions, the focus seemed to shift completely on them, with Natasha becoming an afterthought, doing a disservice to Scarlett Johansson's fan favorite character in her final MCU outing. I guess the action is cool though. I love how Black Widow and Taskmaster do this death-defying free fall throughout the sky, even though that seems to be everyone's least favorite part of the movie. But if that's the case, right? If you guys don't like that, then what really is there to like? I mean, I'm not really a fan of the humor. It doesn't really hit all that much. I mean, some of the choreography is cool. She should have died 1,000 different times in a bunch of scenes, and that didn't happen. What do you guys love about this? Because I don't know if I'm giving a hot take or number 36 is going to be The Marvels. Honestly, The Marvels is just dumb fun, more so than I expected to. Yes, Dar Ben as the villain here is absolutely terrible, and the story was edited and chopped to bits according to director Nia DaCosta, but at least there's a hilariously random singing number, body swap hijinks, and some really creative action. Amon Vellani's charismatic performance basically carries the whole movie, and Tiana Paris brings the emotions. Brie Larson is just kind of there again. But Nick Fury is at least back in full swing here with his role effectively making everything that happened in Secret Invasion moo, as Joey Tribbiani would say. But I did love that post credit scene with Kelsey Grammer's Beast. So I don't know. This one kind of has me conflicted, if I'm being honest. If y'all haven't stopped listening by now because of all these hot takes, I'm about to hit you with another one. Number 35 is the first Doctor Strange. Marvel Studios' entry into the mystic arts should have been like a real life Jack Kirby comic the whole way through, but the awe inspiring and visually stunning mystical scenes are few and far between. The masterful Mads Mikkelsen is also wastefully underutilized as Caecilius and should have been casted as Doctor Doom. Just saying. Though renowned actress Tilda Swinton does a decent job as the Ancient One. Benedict Cumberbatch does slay in the role, but the humor feels forced. His romance with Christine contrived, and the finale with Dormammu anticlimactic. Overall, I wanted to love this movie. But Scott Derrickson's first and only MCU flick personally never quite reached its potential, probably due to his style having to fit the hit or miss MCU formula, making this movie basically a Tony Stark story, but with magic. Not bad by any means, just not one of my go tos. At number 34, which is surprisingly higher than I thought it would be, I got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, look, this sequel was low key underwhelming, and it was one of my most anticipated MCU projects. But James Gunn just made an alarming amount of off kilter decisions when conceiving Volume 2, namely with its childish, mean spirited humor and obvious plot twists. And this was something I was worried about going into Superman, but he did go with that movie, so. Are there some standout scenes that provide an enjoyable and emotionally gratifying experience? Sure. But when the number of things teased in the movie's multiple after credit scenes are more interesting than the film itself, there's a big problem. Don't get it twisted though. I love me some Baby Groot. It's just when you have such a thespian like Kurt Russell and it cuts to a David Hasselhoff joke, like, what are you doing here, guy? Or when Star Lord becomes Pac Man, what are we doing here, guy? I don't know. It's just not a movie that I ever really revisit, though upon rewatch and given time, it has kind of grown on me, but I'm conflicted. Now I'm convinced if you're still watching or listening that you just want to hear how many more hot takes I got. Because, yes, I have Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania at number 33, right above Guardians Volume 2. Look, though I'm biased toward the first Ant-Man movie, as you'll see later on in this list, Quantumania was bananas. Jonathan Majors overshadows everyone else and stomps as the time-conquering warmonger, making you empathize with his goals and quiver at just how dangerous he could have been to the Avengers as well as the rest of the multiverse. That is until the actor got 86th and Marvel pivoted completely to Doom, but that's besides the point. I mean, he did get beat up by ants as well, but that's besides the point. That being said, the humor can be a bit much at times, which seems to be a recurring problem in the MCU, and the dialogue can be extremely corny and somewhat disruptive. Nevertheless, this threequel is not the worst culprit of such mishaps and actually had me cracking up on more than one occasion, so it deserves some brownie points. The film's primary setting here, the quantum realm, is a little tame when it comes to being weird and psychedelic, but there's some cool, strange looking creatures, sentient buildings, giant, jungle plants galore. Had the CGI been fine tuned, though, perhaps it could have looked better. But MODOK is probably the funniest standout to me in any one of these MCU movies, and his death scene is definitely one of the funniest things I've ever seen in a comic book movie. At least I died an Avenger. Yeah, you're in. Come on, that's funny, man. That's just funny. At number 32, we got Spider Man Homecoming. Iron Man Jr.'s, I'm sorry, Tom Holland's first solo outing as the Webhead skips his origin and has him contend with a terrifying Michael Keaton as Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture. The Shocker and Tinkerer are also thrown in here for good measure, while Peter Parker's comedic, filler like exploits in Homecoming help the titular character grow into his own. Holland's performance anchors the film, but his reliance on technology, plus the movie's lack of standout scenes or pulse pounding action, just holds this one back for me. And that hurts. Just missing the top 30 is Iron Man 3. Boasting yet another revenge plot against Tony Stark, Iron Man 3, aka Tony Stark the movie, has me conflicted. I dig Tony's in character arrogance in being able to take on a terrorist, but then he stupidly gives his address out on live TV. Though the Mandarin twist is redeemed in Shang-Chi, the great Sir Ben Kingsley is turned into a complete joke here when he was doing such a menacing job in the first half. I like that Tony finally takes the shrapnel out of his chest, but why the heck did it take him so long to do so? Now I can go on and on. And some may claim this Shane Black helm superhero flick is their favorite in the Iron Man trilogy. That's wild to me if it is, but whatever. But I have a borderline love hate relationship with it. Here's one fact we can all agree on though: Iron Patriot and that pointless post credit scene stink beyond all heck. like no point whatsoever. But making it into the top 30 is going to be the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. After the lackluster Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, this Christmas based special reminded me just how much I love spending time with the titular team of misfits. They're a band of barely heroes who care for each other more than anything else, resulting in the heartfelt hilarity that ensues for its nearly 1 hour runtime. The revelation that Mantis is Quill's sister made me cry tears of joy. And with Kevin friggin' Bacon making me cry tears of laughter. You may not know what Christmas is, but Christmas time is here. Even though this hasn't been like a Christmas staple in my household and I've only seen it once. Sorry. But it's good. It's really good. At number 29 is going to be What If? Boasting some immaculate voice talent, What If stands out from the abundance of MCU content nowadays, though I feel like traditional Japanese animation would have been cooler to make the series pop even more, but that's just me. That being said, What If saving grace isn't its story, and seeing different iterations of fan favorite heroes is what kept me tuning in episode after episode. There were some things I questioned here, like Vision easily taking out Thanos, and whether the Sinister Strange we get from season one was indeed the one we saw in the Multiverse of Madness, or how Captain Carter was such a pivotal character, but again, taken out easily in that movie as well. But there's nothing that I really don't like about it, especially with the episodes like Marvel Zombies and the Watcher versus Ultron Vision. Plus, this thing featured Chadwick Boseman's final role in the MCU as a Star Lord variant, which is a crazy sentence to say, but one that would probably get new viewers to actually watch this thing as opposed to the negatives of most of their other shows. Number 28 for me is going to be Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Now, director Ryan Coogler and company certainly did their best to honor Chadwick Boseman's legacy whilst delivering a proper follow up to The Black Panther. Rife with stakes, beautiful visuals, especially during the Talokan scenes, and multiple exhilarating action set pieces, yet some convoluted plot holes and inconveniences, but Wakanda Forever finally introduced the long awaited arrival of Tanak Puerta's Namor. While my initial viewing experience was bittersweet due to the absence of T'Challa, because I just think this would have been a much better film with him in the role, this was nonetheless a solid sequel with Oscar worthy performances in which Ryan Coogler did the best he could with the hand that the whole entire production was dealt. And I think they killed it. I think they did it in spades. It's just really sad that Bozeman did not return. It's his life. This one kind of hurts for me, to be honest, but at number 27, I got Daredevil Born Again. Look, the original Netflix show is one of the best TV shows I've ever seen. Not just comic book TV shows, like literally best TV shows ever. And the choreography, the plot, the characters, the performances, every single thing about those first three seasons were just simply phenomenal. Then Marvel canceled the show in 2018, and since the fans were claiming for its resurrection. Feige finally announced it a few years ago, and the excitement to see Charlie Cox back as the Man Without Fear was just through the roof. Here's the thing. The showrunners set to take over the new series wanted to completely overhaul it and do something brand new, throwing out all the nuance that made the original what it was. Luckily, Marvel realized that that was a bad idea, and the original showrunners took over last minute to add in some things that fans actually wanted to see, like the return of Karen Page, Foggy Nelson, The Punisher, and Bullseye. I loved the White Tiger portion of the show, by the way, and the fact that Kingpin seems more menacing than ever is awesome. But the show always felt like it was fighting with what it wanted to be. Luckily, the original showrunners are taking over completely next time around, so I'm sure the second season is going to blow the first right out of the water. I just really had high, high hopes for this one, and it didn't deliver as much as I wanted to. That's all. Now, this is probably going to be my biggest hot take, but I do not care. At number 26, I got Eternals. Boasting charming performances, a couple of cool action scenes, welcomed representation, and multiple DC Comics references. I love DC. Eternals was a pleasantly refreshing surprise when it first dropped in theaters, for me at least. Though it didn't hit with critics, this underdog MCU outing hit with some fans years later, who agree that its world building probably would have been better suited for a Disney Plus series instead of a 2.5 hour long film. I personally could have done without the introductory info crawl and the extensive exposition dump midway, but its likable cast, Kingo and Karun, anyone? Come on. And philosophical subject matter make this a unique entry in the MCU. And now that we've gotten direct answers to that giant floating celestial in Captain America Brave New World, there's no more reasons not to watch this one. It's connected now. Get over it. Sure, the post credits tease of Blade and Eros won't be leading anywhere anytime soon, but who really cares at this point? But bringing in our top 25 is going to be Ant-Man and the Wasp. Doubling as the Wasp's official long-awaited debut, Paul Rudd's second solo outing as the miniature Man of Might further explores the MCU's quantum realm in a relatively straightforward story that ties in with the Avengers Endgame quite importantly. Film's strength is in its simplicity as it favors tasteful comedy and creative action over complex existentialism. On the antagonist side, a redeemable Lawrence Fishburne's Bill Foster, Hannah John Kamen's Ghost, and the esteemed Walton Goggins' Sonny Birch aren't the most memorable villains, but not exactly the worst either. I'm sorry, I just had fun with this, and I'll always take Louise recapping any kind of story ever. At number 24 is going to be Thor. Now, the God of Thunder's first MCU outing started fantastically with the wonders of the Nine Realms as director Kenneth Branagh imbued the film with a Shakespearean vibe that helped Chris Hemsworth's titular hero stand out amongst the rest. While most of the film, unfortunately, takes place in the drab desert of New Mexico rather than the imaginative Asgard, the cast performance, Loki's harebrained schemes, the further inclusion of S.H.I.E.L.D., and one of the best Stan Lee cameos to date make this film worthy of watching. Get it? Get what I did there? But sitting right above Thor, I got Iron Man 2. Sure, the first official sequel in the MCU has its faults. What doesn't? Including the world building distractions and a rather non threatening central antagonist in Mickey Rourke's Whiplash, I want my bone. But it has some redeeming qualities as well. Not only do Black Widow, War Machine, and Justin Hammer steal the show, but it's probably one of the more balanced MCU movies, comedy and action wise. And of course, RDJ's ever charismatic performance more than makes up for the film's lack of focus and tension, no matter how convoluted the story actually is. Plus, that briefcase suit up scene is just chef's kiss. If you haven't seen Werewolf by Night yet, then go watch it because it is awesome, and I got it at number 22. Werewolf by Night is a prime example of obscure comic book goodness done right. Not only does it make for an essential watch come Halloween time, but it's just a fun, well paced, action packed character piece that thrusts viewers into the supernatural side of the MCU. The horror elements, the black and white aesthetic, the flip kicking action, all of it makes the werewolf fan in me jump for joy, and all the more excited to see Gael Garcia Bernal, I think that's how you say it, return in the role alongside my boy Man Thing sometime down the road. I can't say enough good things about this thing. It was really, really cool. But it's only an hour long. I wish it was longer. Nearing the top 20 is going to be X Men 97 at number 21. As a fan of the original series, I was ecstatic to know that Marvel Studios was resurrecting one of the best animated comic book shows in existence. The voice cast is fantastic, and the story here seems more personal than ever. With the stakes higher than previously in the old show, making Magneto the leader of the X Men in an attempt to live according to Charles' dream of peace and unity instead of his own brotherhood of evil mutant ways was the best thing the showrunners could have done. There's also some secrets come to light, surprising character deaths, and plot twists galore in this thing, not to mention the animation is just simply amazing. I just love that this thing exists, to be honest, and while I might not be revisiting it anytime soon, this series is still one for the books. Sorry. I cannot talk today. But starting our top 20, I got Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Scarlet Witch as a supernatural powerhouse who grudge crawls through mirrors, Doctor Strange flinging musical notes at his multiversal doppelganger, giant eyeball creatures terrorizing New York City. I mean, I didn't think it was possible for Doctor Strange's world to get any stranger, but my man Sam Raimi certainly proved me wrong, even if Marvel fought him for the reins for like 50% of the film. Sure, the actual madness in the movie was somewhat tame, with the Illuminati scene being its only real multiverse highlight. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't at least intrigued to see where the third movie in the trilogy could go, especially where Charlize Theron's Clea is concerned. The third eye Strange obtained seems to be of no consequence, though, and America bodying Scarlet Witch would never have happened. But I like the movie nonetheless, way more than the first one at least, and I'm just really, really hyped that we got to see John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic. That was awesome. And that little when Professor X comes out, like that was sick. I like this movie, man. It's pretty good. Zombie Strange at the end was cool too. Let me not mention that. At number 19, I got the underrated and overhated gem, The Incredible Hulk. Introducing us to the MCU's first version of the rageful Green Giant before Mark Ruffalo took over, the Incredible Hulk never lets up as Edward Norton's Bruce Banner contends with the military, an epic brawl with the Abomination, and his worst nightmare, himself. This glorified monster movie feels hugely disconnected from the rest of the MCU, but to me that kind of makes it more special. Creative differences drove Norton away from the role going forward, and I can't help but wonder what could have been had he remained Bruce Banner. But this somber character piece for one of my favorite superheroes will always have a special place in my heart. Sorry, not sorry. This one's also pretty underrated to me, but number 18, I got Avengers Age of Ultron. Joss Whedon struck gold when he made the first Avengers film, but following up that movie's success was never going to be an easy task, even with James Spader as the central villain. Age of Ultron's downfall was that it needed to provide fan service, lay the groundwork for future films, and avoid being a carbon copy of its predecessor while simultaneously juggling a plethora of concepts, characters, and action sequences. Hulk versus Iron Man, anyone? That was sick, right? Hulk versus Iron Man in the Hulkbuster armor? Like, what? Nevertheless, Vision and Ultron's philosophical debate, Nick Fury's helicarrier rescue, and the Avengers trying to lift Mjolnir in the Avengers Tower are all scenes that make this movie worth the watch. So even though it kind of drew the short stick compared to the other Avengers movies, this one is still really cool. At number 17, I got Black Panther. Now, Black Panther has certainly grown on me with every rewatch. Perhaps it's the endearing quality of the late Chadwick Boseman's performance as T'Challa, being that it was his first and only solo outing as the titular king of Wakanda. And though the film's action is sparse and its VFX a hit or miss, the storyline involving Wakanda's absence from the rest of the world is compelling enough to captivate any viewer, especially with its unconventional "the bad guy is right" ending. I just love the quote that Killmonger says when he dies, when he's like, "Bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from the ships because they knew death was better than bondage." Dude, chills. But at number 16, I got Peyton Reed's Ant Man. Ant Man sees Paul Rudd in the title role in a movie that has some of the best humor, visual effects, and most creative set pieces in the entirety of the MCU. They even managed to get Michael friggin' Douglas as Hank Pym and finally tease the Wasp, an original Avenger from the comics. Not to mention Michael Pena's hilarious story recapping Luis and Corey Stoll's unhinged Yellow Jacket are both just having a blast alongside the rest of the cast. It would have been interesting to see what Edgar Wright would have come up with when he was hired to direct the film back when the MCU wasn't even officially established yet. But I think what Peyton Reed came up with was a pure fun heist movie set in a world full of superheroes. It was dope. Gosh, do I love this movie. At number 15, I got Thunderbolts. This one just came out of nowhere. Thunderbolts was a straight up banger, and it surprises me how much money this movie didn't make. Florence Pugh is a genuine acting powerhouse, and the rest of the cast play their characters to the absolute T. Sentry here is, of course, the standout character with his evil side, the Void, becoming one of the most memorably disturbing villains in the MCU. I actually love the twist that it was a ruse to introduce the new Avengers, and I especially love the emotional journey that got us there. Plus, the post-credit scene is what pulled this all together for me as I finally got that feeling I used to get from the Infinity Saga of the MCU, where every tease of Thanos' impending arrival got you more and more excited to see the next movie. Those are truly the days. And now we are nearing the end with our top 15 in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. As a fan of Kim's Convenience on Netflix, I already knew Simu Liu was going to kill it in the title role. His martial arts skills did surprise me, though. I had no idea the dude could do that. But doubling as the first Asian centered blockbuster comic book movie and boasting the gravitas of legendary actors like Tony Leung as the goated Wen Wu, aka the real Mandarin, and Michelle Yeoh's Ying Nan, Shang-Chi's exhilarating action set pieces, culture appropriate music, engaging storyline, and the supporting cast all scream rewatch value. Though the ending is a tad random and unnecessary as it includes giant dragons going at it, doesn't really stop this one from being one of Marvel's best. Plus, I love Morris, that furry little faceless bird thing, and if Destin Daniel Cretton can create the dopest action scenes we've ever seen out of the MCU, that just makes me more excited to see what he does with Spider-Man Brand New Day. Number 13, we got Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one. I personally remember being on a date watching this flick and completely ignoring my date because I was just so invested with everything that was going on. Needless to say, there was no second date. But beyond all reasonable doubt, James Gunn was somehow able to infuse one of the most obscure teams in Marvel Comics with a sense of fun and relatability, including one of the best soundtracks ever compiled and some of the most emotional moments in comic book movies, inevitably making the Guardians a household name. How he did it, I don't know, man. He just got that skill. Although I'm not a fan of Ronan the Accuser, he's kind of a boring villain, or the dance battle face off. Less said about that, the better. We are Groot after all. What's wrong? At number 12 is going to be Thor Ragnarok. While Ragnarok lacked the weight of potentially emotional stakes, it more than made up for it with its mostly blanded humor, 80s vibe, a beastly kid like Hulk, and two seed stealing performances by legendary thespians Jeff Goldblum and Kate Blanchett to the backdrop of Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song. Classic. Even Thor has an engaging arc that made him a fun and lovable character while maintaining his godly composure rather than the slapstick, split kicking, axe riding buffoon he became in Love and Thunder. But we should have seen the signs that Taika was going to be off the rails if he was, you know, not reined in. We should have seen the signs. Just missing the top 10 is going to be Captain America, the first Avenger. The Star Spangled Man with a plan. Look, with an uncanny ability to portray a pure of heart goodness in Steve Rogers, Chris Evans makes the MCU's first superhero, chronologically, an absolute boss and someone you always want to root for. Maybe the Red Skull stuff could have been a bit more exciting, but the action, the humor, the 40s vibe and aesthetic that director John Johnston was a master at, everything simply meshes together perfectly, providing a solid 2 hours of a hopeful hero's journey that proved we could watch Captain America bashing Nazis with an oversized frisbee all day. We did it, guys. We're finally in the top 10. And what better way to start it off than with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? Look, just when I was feeling iffy about James Gunn's newly appointed title of DC Studios co CEO, he completely eradicated my doubts with a surprisingly epic and emotional punch packing Volume 3. The long awaited threequel closed out Gunn's lengthy tenure with Marvel Studios as well as provided a satisfying send off for everyone's favorite team of misfits. Perhaps my favorite thing about the flick is that it never let up with the emotions, which Gunn failed to balance in Volume 2, as I stated before. But seriously, if you have any semblance of a heart, you'll be crying 1 minute followed by a burst of laughter the next. The action is nothing to scoff at either. Both the film's practical effects and CGI seamlessly blend to make for a visually engaging 2.5 hour blast of a time. The cast here is also immaculate, with Chukwudi Iwuji dominating the screen as the psychotically misguided High Evolutionary. And this time around, everyone's favorite talking raccoon, Rocket, is rightfully front and center. While not exactly the best movie since Endgame, as some boldly claim, I'd be hard pressed to ignore Volume 3's strong contention as the best of the trilogy, if not at least a top tier MCU flick. Clearly, it is here in my top 10. I gave it a 9, so it's only right that it's at number 9, but I got the Fantastic Four First Steps. Simply put, I loved this movie. The Fantastic Four First Steps is exactly everything I wanted out of it. The costumes to the cast's familial bond, the retro-futuristic 60s era aesthetic, Galactus being a literally gigantic threat with sprinkles of Silver Surfer added to the mix, as well as the birth of the powerhouse himself, Franklin Richards. This movie just has so much to offer and made me cry both times I saw it in theaters. Who knew? While light on the action, it's fun, heartwarming, and a true blessing that we finally got a comic accurate, fantastical version of Marvel's first family. I can't recommend this movie enough, and I can't wait to see what Doctor Doom has planned for Reed and Sue's godlike son. Avengers Doomsday, it can't get here fast enough. Número 8 is Captain America Civil War. Civil War not only introduced the long awaited Black Panther as well as the MCU's version of Spider Man, but it was also the catalyst that split the Avengers apart, making them unprepared for Thanos' arrival in Infinity War. The film's central conflict does hinge on the superhero filled airport scene, which relies too much on humor, in my opinion, and involves high stakes with nearly zero consequences. But the final battle between Steve, Bucky, and Tony was truly one for the books. I mean, Tony straight up got double teamed by two 100-year-old super soldiers, and he was holding his own the whole time. I mean, so many emotions. So the action is dope. I love this movie. Now, believe it or not, this one was tough to place, but at number seven, I got Avengers: Infinity War. Josh Brolin's Mad Titan gripped the MCU by the throat in Infinity War and eliminated half the universe's population. His lengthy quest for the stones had major ramifications for Marvel Studios' heroes, with Hulk and Vision being turned into punks as the most noteworthy. Hence why this was hard to put on the list. Some of the humor doesn't land, and there are some questionable plot holes in play here. Like, there were so many opportunities to remove Thanos' arm, like Doctor Strange had just done earlier in the movie, and then on Titan, all Star Lord had to do was not be Star Lord, and they could have. Look, there's no point in complaining so much because this movie is actually pretty awesome and felt like mashing all of your toys together to create some epic moments from your imagination. Except it was actually brought to life on screen, so most is forgiven. Most. On your left, it's Captain America the Winter Soldier at number six. If the first Avenger made me a Captain America fan, then the Winter Soldier made him my favorite Avenger. This film has some of the coolest action set pieces ever displayed on the big screen. The Batroc, elevator, and bridge fights are absolutely insane, and there's even one scene where Cap takes down a whole Quinjet by himself. Pure awesomeness. Even the story, reminiscent of a 70s spy thriller, is also the most personal for Steve Rogers as he questions his loyalty to his government, while including the introduction of Sam Wilson, as well as the welcome returns of Nick Fury, Black Widow, and Maria Hill. Rest in peace. The Russo brothers started their MCU tenure with this absolute banger and went on to make some of the coolest comic book movies around in the MCU. Fortunately, they're back for the next two Avengers, and I can't wait to see what they do with a whole new canvas of characters to utilize. But bringing in our top five is the film that started it all, Iron Man. With some of the funniest and most iconic scenes in comic book movies, a rock and roll soundtrack, and a theme that only elevated the vibe, a solid villain for the hero's first solo outing, and an after credits tease that blew fans' minds back in 2008, Jon Favreau's Iron Man remains to this day one of the best superhero origin flicks around. It is a quintessential viewing for newcomers and fans alike to understand what gave birth to RDJ's Hollywood resurgence, as well as what makes Tony Stark and his role in the MCU so friggin' special. I love this movie, dog. This movie shouldn't have worked, but gosh darn it, it did. At number four, I got The Avengers. The build up to its release, the mid credits Thanos tease, Iron Man's armor being summoned in mid fall, Hulk handling Loki like a rag doll, the cast chemistry along with the well balanced humor and action, literally everything about The Avengers makes it one of the most rewatchable comic book movies in existence. Joss Whedon was miraculously able to achieve the impossible and made a grand scale team up film even more ambitious than the X Men movies, providing fans with one of the most memorable theatrical experiences in history. I love this movie too. Now, it was kind of tough for me to decide what should go in my top three. The two above this was easy, but the rounding out the third spot was kind of difficult for me to choose. But at the end of the day, I got to go with something that makes me feel super nostalgic, right? And just holds a special place in my heart, and that's Deadpool and Wolverine. Say what you want, but this movie has all the sauce. After Hugh Jackman vowed for Logan to be his last bout in the role, watching the first Deadpool movie completely changed his mind. Thank the Lord. 5 or so years later, Ryan Reynolds made a surprise announcement with Hugh about coming back as Wolverine, finally in the yellow suit, and the rest is history. I'll admit the story here really isn't all that coherent, but does it really matter where there's nostalgic and surprising cameos, bloody violent action, catchy music, and actually hilarious comedy? No, not really. Wolverine is one of my favorite comic book characters of all time, and seeing him finally team up and fight with Deadpool was pretty much a dream come true. Plus, we got Blade back, baby. We got Blade. I'm gonna try not to cry for this one, but at number two is Spider-Man: No Way Home. Look, my mind melted watching Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland share the big screen as three different cinematic versions of Spider-Man battling it out with iconic villains from the movies of old. The fact that this film even exists is an accomplishment in itself, as it completely blew the multiverse wide open in the MCU, which is something I never thought I'd even see in my lifetime. From Tom Hardy's Venom and Charlie Cox's Daredevil cameos, Aunt May's final message to Peter with the great power comes great responsibility thing, bringing it full circle, and the condo fight, which displays the best depiction of Peter's spider senses. This movie simply rules on so many levels. And now that we've gotten an official look at Tom Holland's new suit for Brand New Day, I'm totally excited for the next year to come to see Spidey back in action alongside the Punisher and the Hulk. But of course, number one couldn't be anything else. It's Avengers Endgame. Iron Man's sacrifice means everything to nerds like me, so it's only logical that Avengers Endgame be deemed the most rewatchable MCU movie and one of the outright best films of all time. With 10 years worth of build-up, this Russo brothers directed entry features a bunch of callbacks for the fan service hungry viewers, solid humor for the joke obsessed viewers, bombastic action and dream fueled character interactions for the true blue superhero elitists, and a back half that is indisputably some of the best cinema in history. Steve's final dance with Peggy, Cap lifting Mjolnir, Avengers Assemble. I mean, I can't thank Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios enough for even coming up with this masterpiece. I love Endgame 3000 because it is exactly what comic book movies are about. Fan service at its finest. But there you have it, guys. My official ranking of all 50 something projects in the MCU. I know I look and sound tired. I kind of am. It's been a long day, but I really wanted to get this video out so that way I can get my thoughts finally out there in one way, shape, or form. Admittedly, some of these can change as soon as tomorrow. ADHD. Sorry. But I can't wait for Wonder Man to release on Disney Plus later this year, and I sure as heck can't wait for Spider Man Brand New Day and Avengers Doomsday next year. Those are going to be two very epic movies and possibly two of the best MCU movies we've ever gotten. But feel free to check out my rankings of the Fantastic Four franchise, as well as my reviews in celebration of First Steps finally releasing after a 10-year hiatus for Marvel's First Family. If you like this video, consider hitting that like button and make sure you send this to someone so they can join in on the conversation too. Follow, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that fun stuff if you want to see more content like this. And until next time, guys, take care and God bless.